DT. Good to see everybody here. I have a success story today. I'm always happy to bring them to you. I have Billy Peterson here on the line. Billy, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Jim?
Pretty good, pretty good. When Billy and I met, he had reached out to me to do come on his podcast and do a little just share some information about these neuroplastic conditions. And as we were talking, I realized that Billy recovered, and his story is going to be great. So I said, you got to come on and share it. So here he is.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I really enjoyed having you and hearing some of the expertise that you bring to the table in these mind-body conditions. And so I'm just a big advocate. I'm trying to shine the light as bright as I can.
Yeah, it's awesome. It really is. So I'm going to turn it over to you and maybe share your story. Tell the audience what happened to you and where you are now.
Sure, it's kind of a long story, and I'll try to just hit the high points because I know we don't have 6 days to record this show. But ultimately, I spent almost 7 years in desperation. And it started out just one morning when I woke up and I noticed that I really couldn't, my back was really hurting and it was extremely painful to get out of bed. And I was just in extreme tightness. And I was not sure what was going on, but it was something that was weird. It hadn't happened before and something I hadn't experienced in my whole life. And this was, gosh, it's hard to remember exactly the time it was now because it's so far beyond it. But let me just tell you what was going on in my life. I had recently changed firms. I'm a financial advisor, and so I moved my business to a different firm. And two of my financial partners, we were a financial planning team, they decided they were going to kind of undercut me, backstab me, if you will, and try to sabotage my clients and take them as I departed the
Literally
firm. And
backstab you. I just want to make a note there.
yeah,
No pun intended.
no pun intended. Maybe that's really what was the cause of it, but it was part of those things that you'll learn later. All these things, culmination of events in my life. So that happened. Then I find out my wife has been unfaithful to me and is having an affair outside of our marriage, and
Hmm.
this is going on and very highly stressful, difficult situation. Trying to preserve a marriage with our kids in mind and three children at the time who were young and really uncomfortable situation for everybody. And not long after that, uh, my brother committed suicide. My younger brother took his own life, and so I'm in this turmoil. I'm in this just hurricane of
This is all within a short period of time, like together.
correct short period of time. These things just kept layering in. Now, I don't want to miss the fact that I was also up my whole life. I've always been this highly driven, high pressure, type A kind of perfectionist personality, really driven to succeed, to show my worth and my capabilities to people. I feel like as a young child, that's where I received my sense of purpose and self and acceptance, if you will. So always trying to succeed and make a name for myself. And I think all these things just got to this boiling point where the pot just boiled over. Everything just came out. And of course, back then I had no idea what I was dealing with. I had no idea about the mind body connection or what it meant. I would have laughed it off as a quack job if I would have heard it back then. So, long story short, I woke up that morning. I now this is after kind of all these events had transpired, right? That it wasn't like, oh, bam, that all happened at the precise instant. The point I'm making is these things build up inside and build up, and then you don't know what's going to trigger that explosion. Well, a year after my marriage ended, I'd met another lady, and I married her, and she had a young son, and then I had my three young children, and so we got together and blended that family together. Of course, that's not an easy task. That's a stressful situation as well. So, woke up this morning, back pain. Couldn't figure it out. Stretching, trying to do all these different movements, and couldn't figure out why it was hurting me. You know, a week goes by and the pain is not getting better. It's getting worse. And so I can't sleep at night and I'm having difficulty functioning like I want to. So, of course, what I do is I schedule an appointment. Better go and see a chiropractor. Uh, First thing they do is oh, take x-rays and scare the hell out of you because they tell you you probably have, some condition. So he's thinking, you might have cancer. So he's taking x-rays, bracing me for the worst. Oh, comes back. That's good news, cancer, but sign up for this 3-month course and we're going to get you better. Well, of course I do, thinking, yeah, I'm going to get better. It didn't make me any better. Matter of fact, it got worse. So I kept getting worse. So then I decided I'm going to switch. I'm going to go to a physical therapist. I'm going to try that. Went there for a couple months. That didn't help. I'm going to switch and go just to like a massage therapist. Somebody's just going to work this stuff out. That was not helping. So then I started down the path of whatever I could find, whatever popped up in front of me on this places I was searching, or whoever would talk to me about, oh, you try this or try that. I tried it all. I went to every specialist. I went to every surgeon. I don't know how many MRIs done, blood tests.
What were the diagnoses that you got on your back?
So I heard multiple conclusions. One was you have dozens of microfractures in your back, which is probably causing your pain. What did you do? Were you active? Did you get in an accident when you were young? Well, I was a jockey. I told them I rode racehorses. That was my first career. I rode racehorses professionally for almost 10 years. Oh, well, did you have some accidents? Well, of course I did. Well, there you go. I mean, that's what's happening. I said, okay. So my back's just going to hurt for the rest of my life? Yeah, unfortunately. You're just going to have to learn how to manage the pain. And so, that was what I was told. And of course, I believe it because I don't know anything else. I don't know anything better. And I listened to that, but I kept thinking, there's got to be something, because I wanted a definite answer. Tell me why this all of a sudden came out to me. So I keep thinking back. What was I doing physically at that time? Well, oh yeah, I lifted that heavy piece of furniture. I remember that a couple of days before. Oh, that must have done it. So of course I convinced myself in my mind that I physically injured myself. And I don't ever stop to think that physical injuries will heal. I'm just assuming that I've done something so terrible to myself that I'm never going to get better. Right. and that's how I lived. But I kept expanding my searches. I kept looking at different avenues because I wouldn't stop. The pain was getting so intense and so difficult to even live that I became a shadow of myself. I was not a good father. I was not a good husband. I could barely function doing my daily activities at work. You'd find me sitting in a chair for maybe half an hour, and I'd have to lay down flat on the ground. I would be in so much pain that it was like 10,000 needles stuck into my back. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes it would move around. Sometimes it was such a horrifying experience. And I knew every day that I wake up, I'm going to be in hell again, back to hell. And sometimes I couldn't sleep at night. Sometimes I'd sleep okay. Sometimes the pain would intensify. Sometimes it would back off. So I went along like this for about 6 years. Wow. And I'm at a conference, and again, a financial advisor. I custody all of our client assets with Raymond James Financial Services, and I'm at a Raymond James conference in Las Vegas, and I'm trying my best just to sit through these classes. It's agonizing. My wife likes to go to those conferences because there's usually some fun classes to attend. And what she considers fun is classes on health and on wellness and on, learning about all these different strategies of what do you need to do to be healthy and different ideas that are not mainstream. So she goes to this class. I didn't go. I should have gone.
Of course not.
I'm thinking, no, I don't need that.
Go.
She goes to the class, and this guy is in there talking about how the mind affects the body, how the mind regulates everything, how our feelings and our attitudes about life control the whole thing. And she was fascinated by that. And something stuck in her mind. And so she started, as soon as class was over, she started searching because he had written a book. She's searching for his book on Amazon. And she keeps typing and searches for mind, body, healing, and health and all those. And the book that keeps coming up over and over again is Dr. John Sarno, Healing Back Pain. So she's thinking, well, there's got to be a reason this keeps popping up. So she decides to buy it for me. She bought that book for me, and then another one from Dr. Schubiner. In his book, it's kind of like, I think it was called
Unlearn
Unlearning
your
Your
pain.
Pain.
Yeah.
Yes, Unlearning Your Pain, or You Can Unlearn Your Pain, something like that. And she bought those, and so when we got home, she says, "I've got a surprise for you. I want you to read these books." And I looked at her like she was completely idiotic. Like, what are you doing? Look, this isn't what my problem is. I have MRIs, I have physical problems. I started scrolling, just opening up, and the first thing I did was just kind of chuck it across. I'm not even going to look at this book or either of these books.
That's such a classic response I hear from a lot of people. They're telling
You
their story.
know, it's sad that we're so brainwashed into the medical world. And now that I see it, and I've crossed the river, and I can look back to the other side and see where I was and where I came from. I feel so bad for all the people who are on the other side of that river, who are searching for a way across, and they stay right there because they're 100% convinced that they need the medical profession community, whether that be drugs or surgeries or what, and they're so lost, and they're never going to get what I consider to be full healing, full total healing of what condition that they have. And I see it in my business now every day that I talk to. We have hundreds of clients, and inevitably, two or three a week will tell me that they've got some physical condition and they're going in for surgery, or they're going to have a new hip or a new knee, and I try to talk to them about it, but you know how it falls on deaf ears, and I remember how I was, so I can't be too critical of them. But you have to get to that breaking point of desperation, and I finally did, and I picked up the book and I started reading, and within probably 15 pages, my attitude was completely flipped. Like, what am I reading here? Wait a minute. This makes sense. This finally starting to make sense to me of what's going on. And I started to kind of accept the fact that all these dozens or potentially even hundreds of specialists and doctors and things that I'd tried that had failed me miserably. And I'd spent how many thousands of dollars in wasted time and grief didn't didn't help me in the least. And this is now something that I kind of latched onto. So now I want more evidence, right? I'm the type of person that has to have proof. Show me it. Don't just tell me, show me.
Hmm.
That's where I was in my mind. I'm very analytical
Which
like
makes
that.
sense, you know. And I always tell people, yeah, you got to know for yourself the experience.
Right. So that's when I started digging into the internet, and two things happened there. I started to find a small path into this mind body awareness. And I started to find a few websites that had some information. And it's still primitive. The TMS wiki page, and I believe there was one other. A very, very archaic websites,
These were early days. Yeah, there wasn't
early
like
days,
now. Yeah.
because this is more than 7, 8 years ago, and I'm dealing with all this stuff. And I now um, start to see, as I'm searching, unfortunately, all these different physical conditions that I start to see, and it kept bringing my attention back to, oh, wait, maybe I have this condition. So I stumbled, and I lost my grip, lost my focus on the mind body thing. Even after reading two or three books, I read two of Dr. Sarno's books, and I read Steve Ozanich's book, which was very good. It took me a long
Yeah.
time to read it, but I
Great
really
pain
enjoyed it.
deception.
Great book. Uh, so even after reading those, I still wasn't fully convinced because I kept reading stuff on the internet. And then I decided, oh, you know what? I better make sure that I don't have this serious problem, because I'd read some things about symptoms that seemed very similar to mine, the back pain and whatnot. So guess what I did? Call up another doctor. And this time it's a rheumatologist. And I went into the hospital and go see a rheumatologist. They say, hey, I have these conditions, I have these symptoms. What, is it possible that I have some kind of disease? Let's run some blood tests. Well, guess what? Bingo. You do have the blood markers for a disease called ankylosing spondylitis.
Hmm.
Now, unfortunately, there's no cure for this disease, but we have some drugs that we can start you on today, and it'll help manage your pain. So here's a doctor, this lady in a white coat, official, professional. You buy it, you believe it, you trust it. I'm going to listen to her. So these books that I started to read, I brushed them aside again, and I'm not going to. That must have been just something that a few people got lucky with. I gave up on it, and so for the next year, I was taking these drugs. I had to give myself a shot in the leg, wherever I wanted, but in muscle, every week. Started out with Embrel, and I started actually. She told me you're gonna feel a little better. You're gonna feel better. So I did. I felt a little bit better. For the next 3 or 4 months, I felt a little bit better, but I had to keep taking those. And then I start reading. I joined a Facebook group, which was another dumb move on my part. A Facebook group for ankylosing spondylitis sufferers community, and there's tens of thousands of people in these communities, in these groups. So you identify with it. You become that disease that you're told that you have. And I read all the different sob stories, and I don't want to belittle them because I know people are seriously in pain and they're suffering, and so they want common bond. They want a connection with people who feel the same, and I did too. But I would read how terrible their conditions were and what they were dealing with, and then more people would jump in and say, "Yeah, that's happening to me. That's what happens to everybody that has this." You start shaking, you start trembling, you start uncontrollably dropping things. You're gonna have sweats, night sweats. You're gonna have unbearable pain sometimes where you won't even be able to stand up, tie your shoes. Um, well, yeah, that I engulfed all that. That went right into my subconscious mind. And within 3 or 4 days, all of those things started happening
What
to me.
happened? You really wonder, with the power of the brain, that these groups are just basically teaching one another some of these symptoms. It's pretty incredible.
It is so incredible, the power of the mind. And so since getting better, and now I'm 100% better, cured. But since getting better, I've spent so much of my time studying the power of the mind and the power of what it is capable of doing, and realizing that my condition was 100% created by my own internal dialogue, my own internal methods and processes that are going on. I got myself into this mess. And guess what? I also got myself out of it. It wasn't anyone else other than people who showed me the path. They showed me you can do this. This is how you do it. This is how you reset your central nervous system, your thinking, your uh, what's going on in your head, and getting your mind to just be okay and relax and let go of all these worries and concerns that you're continually feeding. And once you
Yeah.
get into the pain, the biggest worry you have in your whole life is more pain. You fear it tremendously. So that's driving more of it.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing, is to tell people to quit worrying about pain, because it's hurt. It sucks.
Yeah.
And so you're
It's
always thinking about it. How can I get out of it? How can I get out of it? And I'm the type, I told you a minute ago, I wanted a recipe. I wanted somebody to spell it out, give me the exact
you're a
direction.
fixer, right? You want to fix this thing.
Yes. And I found that there are a lot of people like me who want that set of directions, and they'll follow it to the T. But that's not really how it works, because you have to reset yourself. Your level of anxiety or worry, whatever you want to call it, to produce all of these negative chemicals in your body has created the environment that pain's going to come out somewhere in some way, shape, or form. It's you're going to create it, and then you're going to you're going to live it because you keep sending those same signals, and it keeps sending the pain signals to wherever it is that happens to be something that, like Sarno says, convinces you that you have a physical problem.
Yeah.
So his first step was stop thinking physical and start thinking emotional. And it was hard for me to do that. But it's like you get to a point where you just need someone to help you trust that you are okay. For me,
Yeah. How did you, so from that point where you were kind of near the bottom again, right? You're in the Facebook group, doctor says you were getting these injections. So yeah, take us from there to where you got to eventually back to the mind body space.
yeah, it's thank the Lord, I will say, for my decision to find and search for doctors that had any knowledge of TMS. And so for your listeners, I'm sure they understand what that stands for, that
Yeah.
acronym, tension myoneural syndrome. Now, of course, there's people out there trying to use the same acronym, uh, magnetic something
Yeah.
resonation.
Transcranial magnetic stimulation,
Yeah,
or something
yeah,
like that.
stimulation. Like, no, please don't do that one. Don't do that one. That's just a physical gimmick. But the TMS is what I was interested in. So even when I had this diagnosis of an incurable autoimmune disease called ankylosing spondylitis, I was getting a little bit better, so I accepted it. But 8 months later, into this treatment protocol, my pain is coming back, and I'm getting so depressed that I actually had consideration of just ending it all, just being done. Life was not worth living anymore. My wife kept urging me to get back into these books, to watch some of these videos. So I started watching YouTube videos on some of the people that had been cured. And there are dozens or hundreds of them. I think there are thousands of them out there now in this day and age, with people who have overcome their pain, all kinds of conditions, whether it be from in Dr. Sarno's world, where he posted them, all the thank you letters that he has on a website. Steve Ozanich has a wall of, what did he call it? A wall of pain,
Yeah. Well, victory or
wall
something.
of victory, something like that, where he has a whole bunch of people who just shared their videos. I watched a whole bunch of those, and then I just started watching like documentaries. There's one called the Heal documentary, and that just came out recently, but that just reinforced all my belief. And there's so many great things that are out there if you're willing to look for them, and you're not looking so just for the traditional or the first thing that pops up on Google, because the pharmaceutical companies own all the searches. They pay for all those advertising. So you won't find it if you're looking for the first thing that pops up, you're going to go down the wrong rabbit hole. So I kept looking for that. Now on TMS Wiki, I was looking for doctors in my area who understood TMS. Nobody in my area, nobody in the state of Utah, not one. So I found one in California that was fairly close, and that's Dr. Schechter, Dr. David Schechter. And I got on the website. I actually called, look, will he take out of state patients? I'd really like to get in there to see him. These are my conditions. Yeah. So they got me scheduled a few weeks down the road. In the meantime, they said, get your files together. So I had a stack of files like you couldn't believe, like all of my medical history, every MRI, every conclusion, even my own notes, because I was journaling everything for so long. What was causing my pain, what my theories were. I had tried different diets, all these different supplements and medications. I'd been to nutritionists, you name it. I'd been to them. It just, the list goes on and on and on.
Hmm.
So I get there and I have this whole stack of stuff, and I go in and I see Dr. Schechter, and I'm looking at him, and I'd read his book too by then. I'd watched his videos on his website. I'm very intrigued. I'm very impressed by him as a person. And he has me in his office, and he examines me a little bit. He has me just lay down on his table, and he's pushing on my back different places, and he's asking me about these different pressure points and where it's painful and where it isn't. And of course, I'm telling him all the pressure points are terribly painful. And so he gets up and he says, "Okay, you have a condition called tension myoneural syndrome." And of course, I'd heard that before, but I had never heard it from an actual doctor. And I almost started crying. Like, you're telling me that my condition is curable? And he said 100%. And I said, wait a minute, doc. I saw a rheumatologist. She told me I have an incurable autoimmune disease. She told me I'd be on these medications. She told me this is probably going to jeopardize my life in some way, shape, or form, and I'm not going to have the same life I always did. He said, it's sad, but that's borderline medical deception. And you, so many people, he said, in this day and age, are getting incorrect diagnosis from medical doctors. And he said it's sad because I really believe that they're doing it for the profit center of putting you on drugs that you'll always be on. Now, of course, he's taking a risk telling me that because that's not the standard protocol for doctors. Standard protocol is, hey, Brad, prescription, let's move you along. Let's get you in for surgery. You have a disease. I don't know what else to tell you. Uh, this opened everything. This changed the whole thing for me. Is when I had another white coat who went to bat for me and basically took a sword to the other white coat and said,
Mm.
no. All right. Now I got somebody in my corner telling me, you're going to get better. This was the crazy part. I remember leaving his office. I'm in a rental car and I drove around the block and I was literally crying
Mm.
because it gave me so much hope that I could actually get better and I could actually move on from this. And Jim, within 2 weeks, I'm walking around the mall one day, just all by myself, bright sunny day down in Salt Lake. I had to go down there to for a meeting, and I stop and I look around and I say, "Wait a minute, something's weird." And then it dawned on me, I don't have any pain. When is the last time I had pain? I couldn't remember when it was gone. I couldn't remember when the last time. So isn't that wild that you go through 7 years almost where you're unable to even perform daily activities, thinking about actually ending your own life, and then you change your mindset, and then pain's gone.
Yeah, I'm always saying it's such a powerful story because it doesn't matter how long you had it. It can shift like that. It can shift that quickly. It doesn't do it for everybody, but it shows you it's the brain. It's impossible for it to shift otherwise. And you were again bought in, right? You 100% at that point. You had
At
gotten
that point,
sort of out of jail card. I love what you said about the doctor taking a sword to the other doctor's diagnosis. So, but you walked out there fully convinced, I think. Is that right? You left his office at that point.
well, you see, looking back, that was what made the difference, all the
Yeah.
difference, because he didn't mince his words. He didn't stutter and stumble around and say, well, maybe this, maybe that, could be, or, now we really do need to be concerned about that disease. None of that. Because if he would have told me that, it would have still been planted in my mind. What he did was he said, no, you don't have that. You never did. Of course, they label you with that. So here's my question is all these diseases that have been brought to our attention and essentially created out of thin air, so to speak, they're just a collection of symptoms, right? Every single disease is just basically a list of symptoms. So you want to label yourself with that disease, go right on ahead. Well, you can just say that's symptoms that I have, and also I can get over those because how I got into this condition, there's a path to get out. Okay, that path doesn't just shut; the door isn't closed, and that's what people don't realize is they think that they get in there and there's no way back out. It's like going into a dark forest. You can find your way back out. You just have to trust it. So when I left his office, I was not in doubt anymore. And I'd spent all those years in doubt because I kept going back, kept thinking they're probably wrong. I probably have something really seriously wrong. I have a
So you left
real
this office and you stopped the injections. You stopped
100%.
breathing right on the spot.
Yep, absolutely. I just, and the same thing goes for other conditions that I have because people think, well, yeah, you're just lucky you just had, whatever that back pain was, but mine's serious. Mine's real. Well, I felt the same way. Of course, everybody says that. Yeah, but my condition is this. Well, I can tell you that I've talked to people and I've read their stories, I've watched their YouTube videos. This is the real deal, guys. I had what's called acid reflux disease, GERD, for 20 years, maybe 22 years. Right after I ended my career as a jockey, okay, I rode racehorses professionally, as I said, for about 10 years. I was good. I was a number one jockey in the country in 1995 by purse earnings. And so when I decided I was going to become a financial advisor, that was a huge shift in careers.
Yeah,
And,
I'd say so.
you know, I didn't know what I was really doing. I had a passion for it, but I knew that my time as a jockey, I was exhausted from the dieting to the injuries. I'd gone through a terrible injury that year. And I was like, I am ready to move on to something I can call a career for the long term. So that was my passion: finance, economics, investing. So I decided, okay, I'm ending my career as a jockey. Made the announcement. It was a big night. ESPN was there, the whole thing. It was all on TV. And I'm walking away from that career and getting into one where I'm starting at the ground level, bottom. I'm at the dumpster level. And no one cares what I've done before. I am
Mm.
a nobody. So I'm calling people, I'm trying, begging out almost to get people to give me a chance, help them with their investments and their retirement. And the stress level increased. So guess what happened? I started having acid reflux problems within just a couple months of becoming a financial advisor. I had no idea of the connection at the time. No idea. I just went into the doctor and says, "Oh yeah, this is very common for people. Uh, you need to be on these pills." So I'm on pills for 15 years. And then I go into a doctor here years later, close to my office, and he said, "Oh, you need to be monitoring this stuff very carefully." So I go in them. They said, "Yeah, you need to have a tubal procedure done where you can look down into your esophagus and into your stomach and just see what's going on." So of course I do that, and they tell me these dreaded words: precancerous. You're precancerous. I am telling you guys, we're being led to slaughter by some of these clinics and some of these doctors. Every time they want to look there, everybody's precancerous because now they can up your dosage, they can give you more drugs, and they can get you coming back for these every 6 month checkups or, at the most every year. So now you're going to do this procedure and they're going to make another $1,000 on you. So you just become one of their revenue sources. So I'm doing that and I'm thinking, yeah, okay, I'm listening. This was before all my mind body
I said
awareness.
before the back
Before,
stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
before. But up my medication, feeling like my body's collapsing. I'm feeling like I've got back pain, terrible stuff. I had issues with my shoulder. I went in and had this shoulder operated on. They said I had a torn. Well, first doctor told me I had a torn labrum. Next, he didn't even look at an MRI. By the way, I went into his office. He wheeled himself in on a on a little wheeler because he just had his knee replaced, and he's like looking at, oh yeah, we'll lift that shoulder. Oh, okay. And so I couldn't lift it very far. He goes, oh, turns to his assistant, schedule him for surgery next week. I said, oh, wait a minute,
Wow.
doc. Don't we want to look at an MRI or anything? No, I've seen these dozens of times. He says, we we know exactly what you have. You have
Wow.
a torn labrum. We'll get you in for surgery. We'll get you fixed right up. And he was gone. He just wheeled himself out of the office. He was gone. So then the assistant's standing there saying, okay, well, next week looks good. I said, I'm not doing surgery. I'm not doing anything. And I got up and walked out. But a few weeks later, the shoulder keeps hurting me. I can't lift it. I want to be able to do the activities. So I got my back pain, now my shoulder. So I think, all right, I got to go to a different doctor, go into a different one. And he says, all right, we'll do an MRI. So I said, at least that, let's try that. Yeah. MRI comes back, calls me up. Yeah, you have a torn rotator cuff. We're going to need to operate on that to fix that up. Okay, if you say so. So I go in and do that surgery. Now to this day, and that was like 9 years ago. To this day, I still can't move that shoulder like I did this one. Now here's the funny part of that whole story. Okay. After my mind body connection awareness and my back pain recovery, I'm at the CrossFit gym one day and we're doing push-ups in the workout and my left shoulder then had this stabbing pain so severe that I just collapsed to the ground on a push-up. I just fell right onto my face. And I don't know what's wrong. And I'm thinking, oh my hell, what have I done to my shoulder? So I tried to do it again, and there it is again, stabbing like a knife right in my shoulder. And I just get up and I go home. And I'm so disappointed. I'm like, what is wrong? Okay. I immediately go back to the whole physical thing. Gosh, I better just schedule for surgery. Hey, maybe I'll go to that first guy this time and not even worry about the MRI. I'll just go right in there for surgery.
Save
And
yourself some time.
yeah, save the time. But my wife gets home and she sees me kind of in this depressed mood about it. And she says, what's wrong? I said, my shoulder's killing me. I don't know what I've done to myself. Must have hurt myself. And she goes, huh? Left shoulder, huh? I go, yeah. So she pulls out her little feelings app. She's just a mind body coach and she loves all this stuff. So she says, oh, well, left shoulder has to do with family issues.
Yeah.
And I looked at her and I kind of smiled and I said, oh my. And that's when it dawned on me that I had been having issues with my daughter, my oldest daughter, who was thinking that she wanted to move out of the house because she wanted to move in with her near her boyfriend, and with her mom, who I divorced, right? And nowhere even in our county or in our school district. So she's thinking she's just going to up and leave and not even going to go to school. And, it was a challenge for me. That was a tough period of time trying to deal with her. And she didn't want to listen to me at that point in time. And when you know it, that's when that thing started to occur. So I slept on it. I kind of dealt with it. I processed it that evening. Next morning, no pain at all. Shoulder, fine. Went to CrossFit that afternoon, did every one of the workouts, and then I did another 50 push-ups just because I wanted to prove the point.
Wow. And that powerful.
And the old me would have went right in for surgery, and they would have told me I needed it. They would have told me I had it. It's like Sarno says, and for everyone out there listening, please remember this. We all have normal abnormalities. Every one of us are going to have problems, conditions. They could point to anything in an MRI on your back and they would say, you have these problems. You should have pain on that. Or you have bone on bone in that knee. Boy, you should have a lot of pain right now. But they're figuring all that out now. That's not what it is. That's not causing pain. So what causes pain is that emotional creation of these chemicals in your body that's produced right there in your mind. That's what's going on. So I had to learn that the hard way. But
Yeah, it's so
again,
counterintuitive. I mean, this work, you're right, physical pain, physical problem,
yeah,
and all medicine reinforces it. So it's so against the grain, this work. But like you said, pretty miraculous, some of these recoveries for yourself, right? To look
yeah,
at, realize it was just stress related. These are just
100%.
related conditions.
All that acid reflux is gone. I mean, it's gone. I was on pills for 22 years. I couldn't go one day without having those pills. I would have terrible burning sensation no matter what I ate. Okay. It would be a glass of water. It would arise a terrible pain. Okay. I haven't had one of those pills in, what is it, 9 years? All
Hmm.
that stuff. I don't take any prescription drugs, zero. And no one in my family does. So we figured out all this, the awareness of when you have a physical sensation, pain, discomfort, anxiety, whatever you want to call, whatever comes up, there's always an answer. There's an emotional root cause that created that. And we've all accepted that. So now we don't look physical. We look the emotional side. All right. This isn't to say that you can't have a physical injury. You can. I've cut myself. I don't know. I mean, you get bruises, you get banged up sometimes. That's normal. That's going to be an acute injury that your body knows how to heal just fine.
It's
And
going
it
to
will
heal
heal.
up. Yeah. But even like the story about your shoulder when it was really sharp, acute pain, you could have easily have just said, wow, I must have pushed it too hard. Even if you were to think positively and say, well, I'll give it a week or two, but you actually went right to the emotional side. So even there, acute symptoms can absolutely be emotionally
100%.
driven as
Yeah.
well.
Yes. 100%. I had that with my knee. So I had started having knee pain. And this was during the pandemic. So um, when we were locked down, when everything was like, they're taking your life away. I'm so mad. I'm not accepting all this. I don't want to live like this. I want to be back to normal. So I was not processing all these things very well. And my knee started hurting. This is the first time for me. And I'm going to CrossFit. Our gym is staying open. These guys are like, no, we're doing it. We're staying open. You
Yeah.
guys can, and so a lot of us are like, we're going to the gym. This is what we do. We're not going to just crawl into a hole. And as my knee is hurting, I can't do the workouts. And so I'm asking my wife, Heather, what is going on with my knee? And so she says, well, right knee? I said, yeah, being non-receptive to events. That's what the knee is for the emotional side of it. And so it didn't take me long to figure out what was going on there because she said,
Yeah.
you know that you're mad about this situation. You have to come to an acceptance level to where you just let go your resistance to it. You let go why you're mad and upset and just let each day be that day.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
And
the
guess what? The knee
acceptance is
started
so
right
important that,
fine.
we talk about expressing your emotions is important, but also the acceptance of situations or things that have happened. That really helps to just release it, right? So you're not resisting it anymore.
Hmm. Yeah, and her feelings app, it came from a book that it's kind of oversimplified in a lot of ways. You look at, but there's a symptom or a set of symptoms for every condition. So it's called the Healings Feelings app.
Healings, feelings app.
Yeah, something
Yeah.
like that. And she just uses it a lot with people and I think it's really mostly helpful to get people to stop and consider that there's
Mm,
an there's another answer here. There's a different
yeah.
answer. Now, for guys like me, growing up on a farm, you're tough. You're supposed to be tough. You don't listen to that kind of stuff. That's goofy. When someone tries to get you to talk about your feelings, you want to kind of get away from that. But that's not something that you're
That's
gonna
not how
admit
you
to
were
doing.
raised. Yeah.
No, no, but
That's the whole idea. I mean, I think a lot of people are raised that way, and people also been through difficult childhoods where there was no emotional support or they weren't allowed to express emotions. Society in general is right. We're pretty emotionally averse, so there's a
yeah.
lot of there's a lot of suppression going on.
Oh, so much. And I lived right there in that mindset for most of my life. And I'm grateful to this day. I'm grateful that not only my wife persisted and helped me continue to change my way of thinking, but all these leaders in front and the doctors who had a lot of courage to break a different ground, who went on their own path and started seeing people get better and weren't afraid to discuss that and talk about it and write books. So Dr. John Sarno, he was ridiculed by his peers, which is so sad to think. They ridicule him, yet he's the one that has the answers, the true healing answers. And now, I mean, he should have a shrine put up, in my opinion, because what he taught and the trail that he kind of blazed for a lot of other people to follow along with. And I'm not saying he was the only one, but I'm just saying he's the one that wasn't afraid to lay that groundwork. And I think so many of us benefited. I can't tell you how many people have found success in recovering from any kind of condition, any kind of physical condition. He calls them all symptom imperative. So whether it's to IBS or migraine headaches, neck pain or back pain, um, eczema, I mean, skin conditions, all sorts of things that people have dealt with and processed and then got better.
Yeah, yeah. His work is foundational and groundbreaking. I call him the Godfather. He's the one who spurred all the next generation, and off of him, we're just kind of growing and growing this work now. Like from when you were going through your recovery to now, it's shifted a lot, and it's hopefully going to continue to shift more and more people out there to help people. And I think people that heal are also like yourself, spreading the word. It's such a that grassroots, change from people who've recovered is enormous.
Well, when you are finally diagnosed with a condition that you're searching so many years to find an answer, it's almost like a relief. You finally get to that point where somebody's told you, here's what you have. And so you accept and you're finally like, oh, thank God I have an answer. And then you stop and think for a minute more. Oh, but that's not a very good answer, is it? You know, but at least you're not searching anymore. So you can give up searching. So that's how I felt when I was diagnosed with this disease, and now I have it. So anytime my wife after that would try to sway me back, I would almost, I would almost want to, throw it in her face. Like, you're not a doctor. What do you know? Here's a doctor. I have a blood condition. They tested my blood. I have the marker for this disease. Okay. They know what they're talking about. And so that's where I lived. That's what I accepted. I have
You
so
ever go
many
back to
friends.
that doctor again, the one who
Oh,
gave
I
you
want to
the
go back. I want to go back so bad right now.
diagnosis?
And I want to go in there and parade through that entire clinic. And I want to just hold up a big sign and say, guys, you are giving faulty medical advice. Um, it's such a shame. And I know deep down, I know that they don't want people to suffer. Okay. They're doing what they think is best because that's what they're trained on. That's what their medical schools told them to do. They're not, I did a lot of research on this. Medical schools spend 1 hour in all of those months and years of medical school. They spend 1 hour on what the mind body issues are and how the mind has some control. They think it has, oh, it maybe perpetuates stress can perpetuate the issue a little bit.
Right.
Well, that's kind of crazy that's all they're gonna that it's just like they don't even care if they miss that class that hour. But what's going on with the whole placebo thing? If you don't think the mind has an effect, why is double blind placebo studies? That's the gold standard in figuring out if a drug is going to be accepted. And so if you come up with a drug that says one additional patient had a better outcome than the placebo group, bam, we got us a blockbuster drug. Think about it. So if you had 150 patients in this, all right, and you had 76 of them with the drug and 74 of them without, and you had 74 get better without a drug and 76 get better with the drug, you're going to say you got a blockbuster drug.
No.
74 of them got better without anything. What does that tell you? Should that not mean something? And by the
Yeah, it's
way,
been that
that
placebo has always been seen as being like some problem, or dismissed as something that, oh, that's just, we don't want to look at that. Yeah,
no,
exactly. What's going on there?
yeah.
It's your
Why don't
brain.
look into it? Because maybe a good portion of the 76 also got better just because they thought they were going to get better. So the drug had
Right.
nothing to do with it.
The actual
So
drug effect is usually quite small in those studies. The
yeah,
placebo is seen across all those studies, and so is the nocebo, which is that negative effect, which you had in your Facebook group, and bad medical information from doctors. Those are called nocebos, and they're actually shown to be even more powerful at times than placebo. So they really hurt people.
they do. And I've experienced that because so if you're going out there and you have a condition and you think you're going to find some great resources on Facebook, I advise you to stay away. I advise you to stay off of WebMD and Facebook. I advise you to find these groups like Jim's here and others who are promoting what the true health is. Just stop and think about it. Stop and think about the money and the conflicts of interest that are all around us. We are one of only two countries in the entire world that allows direct to consumer advertising for pharmaceutical drugs. One of only two in the world. So every time you sit down and watch a sporting event or a movie or a show, you're sitting there, you're gonna get bombarded with advertisements for drug companies, for drugs, here's you have this symptom. Oh my God, yeah, I think I do. Maybe I better get that drug. So you're always calling your doctor. Now you think your doctor's going to tell you no. Most doctors are going to, oh, let's take a look at you. Oh yeah, you probably have that. Let's get you a prescription. So the kickbacks are everywhere. The money incentives are everywhere. The drug companies are profiting right, left, and center, and we are buying it like a herd of sheep to slaughter. We are just accepting the fact that we cannot live our lives without drugs or without some kind of intervention. And I'm not trying to criticize because I used to be that person. But I'm really strongly encouraging everyone who's listening to please stop and please reconsider what the motivations are. Sarno and everyone else who led the way in this type of movement, they knew that there's no big money in this. Once people get better, the pipeline of money is over. There's
Yeah.
no more
So much
revenue to be
business
had.
that would be, look at all the business you gave these other practitioners, and it's very threatening to people's careers. And I think most people, they learn what they learn in school. They're out doing their thing, but it is very threatening. And Sarno was sort of kind of ushered out the door after he retired. From what I heard, he wasn't celebrated. He didn't have a big party, best-selling books. No, they kind of, okay, we'll see you later.
The old man, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Doctors we heard in the clinic would privately go see him. They would
right,
never tell their patients, but they would see them privately because they knew.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He had the answers, but they didn't want him to be leading their clients away from the profit center.
Yeah,
And that's where our system is broken. Our health system is broken. We spend more money on health care in this country than any other country in the world. Yet we have some of the poorest health outcomes in the world. So you tell me, is it more money we need to spend? Or do we need to maybe refocus and relook at it? Maybe it's less. Maybe it's we need less doctors in our faces, conditions, symptoms springing into our subconscious mind. Because once you put a condition, you'll see it on a billboard, you see it on an advertisement, and if you kind of watch that and you subliminally you accept it, you see people around you, then you start thinking subconsciously. You don't even have this on a conscious level yet. That rises to it. You now have that condition and you accept it because that's just a symptom that's going on in today's age. So it used to be the ulcers. Sarno talks about the ulcers. It was so common back in those days, and now it's the back pain. It's whatever is in vogue. He calls it.
yeah.
Remember, people had carpal tunnel. That was a big deal, right in the '80s, and everybody had carpal tunnel. Had to have surgeries for that. The migraines. We don't really know they're doing that transcranial stuff. Um, all
I
these,
see stuff like burning mouth syndrome, which is not something I never had seen before, and that's becoming more common. So there's stuff like you said that come into vogue and
yeah,
contagious in a way, and it's
Lyme
pretty.
disease, fibromyalgia. There's
Yeah,
so many of
that's
these are
another big
just
one. Just viral
right in front of
diseases,
us, all
long
over the
COVID.
place.
Long
A-
COVID's a
a-
new one too.
yeah, yeah, it is. And I read in the papers, and I'm still a traditionalist. I read a newspaper, but people who consume their news on social media, wherever, we're bombarded now with the whole, the food and the gut, and these are all conditions. Now, look, haven't been where I've been, and I'm trying to be healthy. I've always advocated for eating healthy, right? And being smart about what you consume and not eating a whole bunch of processed foods and trying to consume good quality food. Big advocate for that. But the problem we're having now is they're trying to come up with a reason for all these conditions that we're all having, the explosion of diseases in our country, the healthcare problems we're having. And then now they want to shoo it all into this food issue. It's all about the food. It's all about what we're eating. It's all about your gut. And that's again another escape hatch because they don't know how to evaluate the mind. They don't know how to put that into a box or put it into a lab, dissect it and come out with something that's exact. They want an exact scientific answer. And you don't get that studying the mind because it's so complex and so powerful,
Mhm. Yeah,
way beyond what we're able to understand. And
yeah,
so eat healthy, but don't assume that your health is all dependent 1000% on eating because I went through all that stuff, changing my diets, went on these uh all these different diets that every doctor had recommended and every nutritionist, and I tried all of it, guys. I
yeah.
was, I was also told that I had gluten intolerance at one point by a doctor, so I had to go on all of that stuff. Right?
I see that's a
No
whole
gluten.
nother one. They've proven for those listening, unless you have celiac, the gluten's another big nocebo. So it's another in vogue thing, right? Gluten's kind of
Yeah.
anything, the word food sensitivity, that word sensitivity means we're sensitive to the food. Doesn't mean something's wrong with the food. It
Yeah.
means our nervous system is sensitized, our brain. So it's again back to our brains and minds.
Yeah. And what you're willing to accept as fact and truth, and what you're willing to maybe not willing to allow in there. My
Yeah.
daughter was having some migraine headaches. This was again before I knew all I know now. And we couldn't figure out why she kept having migraine headaches. And she was only 6 years old at the time. And she was just, fun loving, little girl, very sweet, and she was playing baseball, so it was recreation baseball at the time. And she and her older brother, who's a year older than her, were on the same team. And they're both good little athletes. And she was the only girl on the boys' team. And she could hold her own, but she would get so stressed out going into these games because she had such high expectations for herself. Like she doesn't want to strike out, and she'd strike out a few times, and the pressures kept getting to her. Now we didn't know that that was correlated, but she would have such severe migraine headaches that she would actually throw up, and she would be down for hours. So we would go to specialists. We took we went in and had a CAT scan done. They confined her, wanted to put her in an MRI machine, and she was so terrified. I couldn't allow her to stay in that thing. I aborted the whole procedure. I said, "Bring her out. We're not doing it." She was screaming, terrified of this. Like I can't do that. So we took her to a nutritionist. Nutritionist tells her, "Oh, yep, here you got you're allergic to these 8 foods." Something. I mean, there's a whole host of them. You can't eat cheese. You can't eat eggs, chicken, milk. You can't. So everything that she liked, basically, they told her she can't eat. Okay, so we pull her off of all those foods for a couple of weeks. Nothing changed. Then we started. It's like an aha moment. And Heather was already consuming all this mind body stuff, and I just started kind of reading about them. And she goes, "Wait a minute. When we go to these games, her games, that's when she has her breakdowns. It's either right before or right after her baseball game. My major migraine, unless she has a great game. Now, weird. Great game, no
Yeah.
headache.
Interesting.
Huh, weird. So we finally said, damn, how dumb are we? Here's the condition, here's the answer. And so we just started talking to her about it and just helping her process the stress of it and helping her understand that it's just a game and you're okay and it doesn't matter if you strike out. And migraines disappeared. No more
Yeah.
migraines.
I think of migraines, it's an amazing story. Pressure, right? You use that word pressure. Migraine, right? It makes sense. Pressure in the head, migraine. So putting pressure on yourself or feeling pressure externally, taking in a lot of pressure, right? Feeling stressed. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But like nobody goes to the mind body first, right? It's usually the
Mm.
last thing. Luckily, you guys were onto it and got to it fairly soon, and she recuperated. But it's just so powerful, all this stuff. I mean, your stories are great, and um, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing it. I think it's an awesome story, and you suffered for a long time, right? And you got out of not just back pain, but other things as well.
Oh yeah, so
Like,
many, and my family too. I look back on and say it was all worth it because I was able to suffer for a reason. I was able to find the true path and show that to my kids and all those around me who will listen. And I try to help people and I try to show them this path. A lot of people won't listen because they're so convinced that their issues are physical and they're real and they have to listen to their doctors and everybody. But all those things that we've been told, me, my wife, my daughter, all of us have had these conditions, and we go back right back to doing what we were doing. If we were to listen to them, we would be living in a shell. We would not be the same people.
yeah, yeah. Well, good for you. Thank you for spreading the word. And we need everybody out there who's doing this work or recovered or covering to keep spreading the word because the mainstream medicine isn't doing it. So I appreciate you being here, Billy. It's an awesome story.